Hey, I'm golf broadcaster Matt Adams. The updated and expanded second edition of my book, The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments, is now available. Readers can expect to march with Arnie's Army at the 1960 U.S. Open, relive Jack Nicklaus's remarkable 1986 Masters win, and be amazed by the Tiger Slam. The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments. Pick it up where fine books are sold, including BarnesandNoble.com and Amazon.com.
We'd like to thank y'all for coming on to the Football's Family podcast. And we're recording a little bit later at night than typically. You don't know the time, but it is 8 o'clock Central Time here on a Saturday night because the guest that I have on now, she'll introduce herself in just a minute, and I have been playing musical texts and emails, and we finally got together. And I'm looking forward to this because I was able, I'll let her introduce herself before I talk too much. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Kelly Bennett. I am an author, a writer, mostly of picture books. And thanks, Jeremy, for having me. I'm in New York right now, and it's 9 p.m. And it's lovely to be here.
Oh, see, so like I told you, my puppy is doing. Would you like to describe your book while I go and rescue the puppy from doing what she's doing?
So Jeremy has a new puppy, everybody. I'm really on tonight, not about football, but about baseball, because Jeremy found out about my book, The House That Ruth Built. And this is very cool. For any of you who are baseball fans, on the 28th, the baseball season opened up. And this book is actually about the first game in the original Yankee Stadium 100 years ago. On April 18th, it'll be 101 years ago. And Jeremy knows, but I write picture books. Mostly, I write them. Now, a picture book is a book like this that is...
It's not going to be on video, so you can describe it however you want to.
Okay, great. So it's picture book is one of those big books, and if I think about it, that are too big for babies to hold in their hands. Adults have got to hold them. They're the ones that have a little bit of text and a lot of pictures.
Yes.
And I mostly write books that celebrate family, friends, fun, game, all that goes into being a kid. I have written for 35 years, and for the last 8 of those, I have written a poem a day for more than 2,700 days in a row with only 2 misses. And I don't write good poems. It's just to get my creative juices going. I write with a partner. So her name is Cindy. She is wherever she is. I am where I am. But we have accountability. We have to email the poems to each other. And if one or the other of us misses a day, this is how we started it. We had to pay the other $50 to the charity of their choice, which is not a bad thing to do, but it keeps us going. And what I found in the process is a lot of poems have come from that, which gets me to The House That Ruth Built, because the prompt for one day was to write a poem based on a nursery rhyme. We are big baseball fans in my family. The book is dedicated to my grandfather, who was a semi-pro baseball player, born in 1898 in Watsonville, California, and he was a semi-pro catcher. Semi-pro meaning there were no teams west of the Mississippi or south of St. Louis back then, so there were no major league teams. But the reason the games used to start at 3 p.m. was because everybody would work a full day, pile into trucks or wagons or whatever they could, and go to where the games were played. And the games went on until it got dark at night. So he always played baseball. Us growing up, we would spend summers with my grandparents. I didn't grow up with a father. I just grew up with my mom and my older brother, Joe. And the backdrop of our lives was a baseball game. So when the prompt came, the poem, the nursery rhyme to write the poem about was The House That Jack Built. Do you remember The House That Jack Built? Yeah. It is a cumulative poem. This is the cheese in the house that Jack built. This is the mouse that ate the cheese in the house that Jack built. This is the cat that chased the mouse that ate the cheese, and so on and so on. And I started thinking, because we're a baseball family, the House That Ruth Built is the name that was given to Yankee Stadium before it was built, because Babe Ruth was such a popular baseball player. The owners of the Yankees, two colonels, Colonel Rupert and the other guy named Cap Tillinghouse, they thought that if they built a stadium, the biggest, tallest, grandest stadium to date in America, that they could fill it up. 58,000 seats in that stadium, and they could. And so the opening day was April 18th, 1923, and Babe Ruth had said he would give anything if he could hit a home run that first day in the house that Ruth built. The big story question in the book is, Babe finally gets up to bat. Will he or won't he succeed? And you have to have a story question to hang a book on. Got to be something to go through. So that for me was the story question. But along the line, when I started writing that poem, I thought I would like to write the feeling for baseball fans of starting with an empty stadium, brand new, tall, gleaming, ready, and it gradually fills up. And as I went along, tell the children all about the people that work in the stadium. It doesn't just appear. So I'd love to read it for you later, but that was where the idea came for the story.
You obviously a baseball fan. Are you having trouble hearing? I'm hearing a little
No.
bit. Okay. You're obviously a baseball fan. Anybody who is just a little bit of a historian knows Babe Ruth is probably the biggest name in baseball, probably ever.
The most absolutely famous baseball player.
I don't know, Hank Aaron is up there, obviously. Mickey Mantle would be up there. A lot of Yankees from the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s would be up there. But
Jackie Robinson.
Jackie Robinson.
The color barrier, absolutely.
Absolutely, 42. I'm trying to think that if all things, a man who started out as a pitcher for the Boston Red Sox, who ended up being probably the best power hitter ever. I don't consider Hank Aaron a power hitter. He was more of a pure hitter compared to a power hitter. And then you have Ken Griffey, who's probably the greatest hitter I've ever seen, Ken Griffey Jr. There's such a it's just a beautiful swing, and it was effortless. And I think that the best power hitter ever would have been Babe Ruth. To build a stadium around him is an amazing, number one, act of trust. But boy, that had to have been bold to do. We're going to build a 58,000 seat stadium in the 30s. Well, actually, it would have been in the 30s. 1923. That's right. That's 1923, which is on the hills of the World War One, leading into the Depression era, which would happen pretty soon after that, and keeping that throughout the Depression, into the New Deal, into World War II, and on to, golly, when was the new one built? In the early 2000s?
The new one opened up in 2000. Well, they tore down the other in 2009.
Okay.
Babe Ruth and Yankee Stadium are significant because that is when baseball changed. Prior to Babe Ruth and his hitting, it was the dead ball era, of baseball, which was much more about getting on base. So it wasn't about how far you could hit or how hard you could hit. It was much more bunting, trick plays, hit it where there was not a fielder so that you could just get on base. And it was much more of an infield game. It was about stealing and running and playing infield. Babe Ruth clearly did not get the memo because he liked to hit the ball. And people loved to watch him hit. But not only that, he went out to the field with so much enthusiasm, and he swung so hard with everything they had. They said the only thing better than watching Babe Ruth hit a ball, I mean, the next thing to watching him hit a home run was watching him strike out, because he gave it all. But it also was the change in baseball. So, and people were excited by the hits. You know, the Ty Cobb was before Babe Ruth, and Ty Cobb was arguably across the board. Some people say the best baseball player ever, but he was not about hitting the big hard ball. It wasn't a homer game. It was a hit game. But also Babe Ruth's story, he's also the first superstar, the first sports superstar. He liked press, he liked to talk, he liked to engage with the public, and a lot of people think that Babe Ruth was an orphan. He wasn't. He grew up in Baltimore in what they called Pigtown because it was close to the waterfront, and it is the place where they would run the pigs from the slaughterhouses to the ships to be shipped out. And they said that they would run down the streets, and if you were lucky, they could reach out their basement window and grab a pig while it was running. He grew up, his parents both worked. His mom had 8 children, 2 sets of twins, and only Babe and his youngest sister survived.
Oh, good.
And his father at one time was a lightning rod salesman, and then they ran a saloon. Parents were very busy. Mom was very sickly and frail, and they could not take care of him. When he was about 7, and it's funny because he thought he was 8. They thought he was 8. It was not until he was a grown man and went to Japan he realized that he was 1 day and 1 year younger than he thought he was all of his life. But this little 7-year-old gets shipped off to a home for delinquent, orphaned, and unwanted children, boys, 800 boys. And it was a brother in the orphanage, St. Mary's, who, Brother Matthias, big 6'6" strapping blonde guy, he would hit balls out to the kids and catch them. And Babe Ruth said that he saw him hit a ball and he knew he wanted to do that someday.
Two things, and what I would like for you to do is get into if you said you wanted to read the story.
I'd love to.
Oh, I would love that. That would be awesome because you just looking at you and just talking with you, you have that ability to, number one, not only talk to kids, but talk to me like that, who's a kid inside. I want to see that on display. You were talking about the hitting. I want to say that the nickname Home Run Baker, we all know who he is. I think he had like 6 or 7 home runs in a year. And I read somewhere, and you might know more than me on this, you probably do, that they didn't have a lot of excess baseballs.
Exactly.
So you didn't want to hit it too hard. And I was watching opening day, the 28th.
Uh-huh.
My daughter walks in here and she's like, all right, Dad. I was watching opening day, and they got a little scuff on a baseball, and he threw it, and they got rid of it, no problem. But it dawned on me that there was a movie called Babe, John Goodman. Fantastic movie. Was that, with what you're saying with Brother Matthias and everything like that, was that anywhere close to historically correct?
No.
Okay.
It was roughly based on the Babe Ruth story, yes, but there's they took a lot of liberties in that movie. So don't pay a lot of attention. And at the same time, there's an earlier movie on Babe, a biography of Babe, starring William Bendix. And that one also, they sort of put the myth together with the man. So neither of them are really accurate.
Well, I was listening to a podcast recently on the last King of Scotland.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and they said that's not anywhere near reality too. It seems like a lot of movies that came out in the 80s, 90s that deal with the biopic, I believe is what it's called. You cannot sell the story, you have to sell the myth.
Yeah, and also what I found researching this book, and forgive us all, but a lot of people don't go to the original source for their research. They sell the stories that we've already learned. Even like, for instance, Yankee Stadium, and no disrespect, but while I was trying to research Yankee Stadium, the specs that they had printed, you know, the architects write up the specs of what they say the stadium is going to look like. They changed those before the stadium was ever built. So even if you go to read how many seats it had and how many stands from the architectural rendering, I mean drawings, the original plan, it's incorrect. And then they almost immediately started painting things, and they almost immediately started changing things. And so and then we writers like to embellish. And one writer will say something, and then a few articles down the line, somebody's going to put it in quotes that person actually said it, and it's not necessarily true.
Did he call his shot?
Well, that is a good question. There is video showing him pointing and calling the shot. Lou Gehrig said he called his shot. The pitcher said he didn't, but if you look at, and I'm blanking on the pitcher's name right now, I apologize for all of you baseball people. But if you look at the pitcher said he didn't, but the pitcher wasn't looking at him when he did, and he did definitely point. Now, and the ball went right where he was pointing, but whether he actually called his shot or not, it's so funny. If you go look right now, more than 60 years, 70 years after that shot, people are still debating, and old home movies are still surfacing, showing whether he did or didn't. I don't know.
He moves really fast too. I didn't realize people can move as fast if you watch the video. I know but if you would, before Zoom kicks us off, would you like to read that? And where can they get this book?
Okay, so it's called The House That Ruth Built. It is, I wish you guys could see, it's illustrated by Susanna Covelli, who did an absolutely glorious job of recreating the vintage feel, a lot of details.
It does. Send me a picture of the cover, and I will put it on Twitter. It does. Let me tell you, when you look at the new uniforms, and we're not talking about like the mantle, we're talking about like the pinstripes in the 90s Joe Torre era. This is what you would see in Cooperstown. That's what this one looks like.
We use, oh my gosh, before I even go on, The House That Ruth Built is available anywhere you can get a book. Okay. Truthfully, anywhere. Your favorite bookstore, I've got to say, go to your favorite bookstore. We've got to support our indie bookstores. Anywhere online, the publisher's Familus, and it's called The House That Ruth Built, and it's illustrated by Susanna Covelli. And when I went to research this, when I read, there is a lyrical storyline with the big story question about will Babe hit a homer or not. But along with the book, first of all, the end papers are the blueprint of Yankee Stadium.
My goodness.
And then, look, here's my grandfather, the catcher, up here in the corner. And we have a reproduction of the souvenir baseball that was given out on that original day, and a ticket stub, and you guys, $1.10 would have gotten you into a box seat back then.
That would not even put a down payment on parking now.
I know. It is fabulous. And then all through the book are sidebars with facts and trivia about the game, the players, the stadium. I'll read a couple as I go through. And so I wrote the lyrical poem first. And then I polished it into a picture book manuscript. After Familus bought it, we then went through and added the sidebar facts. And thank you very much. The Library of Congress researchers helped verify the facts. Brian Richards and the New York Yankees, I got a private tour of Yankee Stadium during COVID. And then Brian Richards, who's the museum curator at Yankee Stadium, helped me gather all of the Yankee information. National Baseball Hall of Fame librarian researchers and photographers helped. So we tried, because for me, I'm hoping that while children, ones who don't read yet, will be looking at the pictures and all of the glorious detail and listening to the lyrical storyline, older fans, and as children get older, baseball, they will be enjoying the sidebar, the facts and the trivia. And I hope you do too. And without further ado,
the show is yours, Miss Kelly.
Thank you very much.
And by the way, that looks so much like Memorial Stadium in Baltimore. They were very similar how they were built. It's amazing. It's amazing.
This is the first. It's opening day, Yankee Stadium towers, grand, gleaming, ready. Now, everybody, I want you to think back. This is 100 years ago. There were few cars, Model Ts, mostly horses and buggies. The people who went to that game, they got there on the train. They got there in horses and buggies. They got there in taxis. There was no internet. There was no telephone. There were there were telephones, but they transmitted the game with telegraph. No internet, no airplanes flying over, no radio broadcasting. The broadcaster, he stood down with a megaphone and announced the players with this big giant megaphone to the bottom stand and up to the top. And now it's Babe Ruth. And they didn't have numbers back then. So that was the only time people paid a lot of attention. This is the opening, and it was festooned with beautiful flags. Opening day, Yankee Stadium towers, grand, gleaming, ready. This is the crew who chalks the field. These are the hands who ready the stands. These are the keepers who post the score. Yankee Stadium had the biggest, it was a modern feat of wonder. The scoreboard was as big as a billboard today, and the first stadium with a billboard that big. And little boys, 8 or 9 years old, actually climbed up into this billboard that was 60 feet high and would change the numbers on the scoreboard. They were big metal plates. They're about as big as a book. And these kids sat up there, and they were the ones in charge of changing the score back then. And here come the boys to stack the bats and shag the balls that first day in the house that Ruth built. This little guy down here in the corner, his name is Eddie Bennett. Eddie Bennett was one of the first bat boys at Yankee Stadium, and he was the most famous bat boy in all of baseball at that time. He was a bat boy for 18 years at Yankee Stadium. And you girls, did you know that there are Major League bat girls and ball girls? So you could go out now and try out. The first one was a girl named Alexis Bush, and she was the first Major League bat girl. These are the ushers to welcome the fans, and these are the sharps who announce each play. The sharps is another name for the reporters. As I told you, there were no TVs and there was no radio back then, so the reporters had to be sharp-eyed and sharp-tongued because they had to talk really fast, and they would be typing into the telegraph, and the telegraph line would send the play-by-play of the game back to their hometowns, where a person would transcribe it to put it into the newspaper that day. Can you imagine? And these are the hawkers selling pennants, sweets, hot peanuts, cold drinks. Did you know that Cracker Jacks were first sold in baseball games in 1893? And you know that song, "Take me out to the ball game, take me out to the crowd, buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jacks." Two brothers wrote that song, and when they wrote it, do you know that they had never even been to a baseball game? But boy, did they make Cracker Jacks famous. Here come the fans to watch and jeer, boo and cheer, "Watch out!" These are the pigeons who roost and swoop and sometimes poop. Everybody wears hats in the house that Ruth built. And when you go ahead and read the book, you'll find out that the first baseball players, they didn't wear baseball caps like we have today. They used to wear straw hats. Yeah. And then they were sort of horse jockey kinds of hats. And if you look in the picture, we have an evolution of the different hat styles that came to be until now. Finally, we have the baseball hat the way we know them today. And in Yankee Stadium, Ruthville is what they call the right field bleachers, because that is where Babe liked to hit that ball.
Left-handed.
And there were no seats. They called them bleachers because they were wooden, long planks, like on the end of a picnic table, And they called them bleachers because they were bleached by the sun.
Did not know that.
And they would just pack as many people in those bleachers as could possibly fit. Here we go. Hail the Red Sox to take on the Yanks. Hail the Yankees to take on the Sox. And in the picture, you guys, they're coming onto the field. The background is full of crowd, and in the very back, the subway is running along the top, the subway train of Yankee Stadium. When they originally built Yankee Stadium, they wanted to make it completely enclosed so they couldn't see it, but they didn't have enough money. So they made it into a horseshoe shape. And people riding the train, if they were lucky as the train was going along, and if it slowed down, they could actually see the play on the field. And it's still the same. Even today, though, there's a new Yankee Stadium. It's just across the street. And the train runs behind the Yankee Stadium. Here we go. Hail the band marching onto the field. There waves the flag, all stand and salute. That first game in the house that Ruth built. The same day that this game was going on in Yankee Stadium, the opening day game, in Connecticut, in Columbia University, which is at the top of New York, another famous baseball player who was going to become a Yankee at the end of this year, in the springtime, was playing. And they called him the Babe Ruth of colleges. And do you know who that player was? Lou Gehrig.
Oh, wow.
And then by the end of the year, a couple months after this, he ended up going to the Yankees. He had to leave college and went to the Yankees. So by the end of 1923, the Yankees' first championship pennant game, and they went to the series, Lou Gehrig would be on the team. But he's not on the team yet. Now the Yankees take to the field to guard the grass and cover each base. Now the Sox file into the dugout. They stretch and swing as they study each throw. Now comes the ump to call the plays. Strike, ball, safe, you're out. Play ball in the house that Ruth built. One inning, then 2 1/2 of a third, playing pitch and catch. One inning, then 2 1/2 of a third, swapping ups and outs. Bottom of the third, 2 on, 2 out, the Babe's up at last. In the picture, it is just Babe Ruth. And do you see this little boy down here in the corner? There's a little boy, he's about 3 years old. His name is Little Ray Kelly. When Little Ray Kelly was Babe Ruth's lucky mascot, when he was 3 years old, Babe Ruth was walking down the street, saw Little Ray playing catch with his dad, and said, you know, he is a really good player for a 3-year-old, and invited him to the game. And from then on, Babe Ruth would go and pick up Little Ray Kelly. He even had his own little Yankees uniform, and he would be in the dugout, sitting in the dugout with the team during the games. Here we go. Wait, hang on. Feet together, Babe taps the plate, then raises the bat. Pitch after pitch, through balls and swings, he works the count until, you guys can't see the picture, but what we're looking at is we are in the pitcher's position, looking at Babe. He's got his bat back, and the catcher's down, crouched on his knees, and the umpire's right behind him. And behind, the crowds are waiting to see what's going to happen. 2 strikes down, back cocked, Babe waits, watches and waits. On the field, gloves up, socks wait, watch and wait. In the dugout, sharp eyes, Yanks wait, watch and wait. There's a lot of waiting, isn't there, in baseball? But for everybody who knows baseball, all that waiting is not boring, is it? Because if you're watching, the one thing that's different about baseball from other games is you have got to watch everything. One ball could go anywhere in that stadium. It could change the whole entire game, and you never know where it's going to be. So if you're on the field or if you're on the stands, you are kind of watching everything. You don't really know what's going to happen, and it all depends. Like somebody in the field could be ready to steal a base. You don't know when the pitcher's going to let the ball swing, and you don't know what the batter's going to do, and you don't know where the ball's going to go. So everybody's watching.
Go ahead.
Well, there's a lot of waiting in baseball, and here we go. Did you know that the longest Major League Baseball game ever played was in 1920, and it was 26 innings long, and the game was called on account of darkness with a tied score of 1-1.
Oh, wow.
And the shortest Major League game in baseball played to date was between the Phillies and the Giants, and it was only 51 minutes.
What happened?
I'm not going to tell you. You're going to have to go find out.
All right.
You'll have to go to the Baseball Hall of Fame and look it up. So we're waiting. I'm going to start again here on the field. Gloves up, socks wait, watch and wait. In the dugout, sharp-eyed Yanks wait, watch and wait. In the stands, hawkers and fans crane forward and wait, watch and wait. Finally, the pitcher reclaims the mound. Now the pitcher, Howard Imke, they called him the baloney bender because look at the way he twisted his body up. He didn't want anybody to know where that ball was coming from. So he put his knee way up in the air and his arms way back behind him, and he contorted like he was basically a contortionist. And they said when he let go with that ball, he threw what was called a submarine because you never knew where it was coming from. So finally, the pitcher reclaimed the mound, knee up, knuckles down, windmills his arm, throws the pitch, swing. This is the babe who slugged the ball up, up, up.
So before you go any further, the picture right there, you the work where you are right now. Of course, y'all can't see this, but if you get the book, you know what I'm talking about. The stance that Ruth is right now after he swung, he used a lot of upper body. Yeah, it's fantastic. And he didn't really move his hips that much like what you see now. But it was such a smooth swing. Your artist captured it perfectly. That is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in a book right there. And if you talk to your artist about that, what was her name again?
Susanna Covelli.
If you ever talk to Miss Susanna, for what it's worth, say that a guy in Tennessee absolutely just adores that picture. And if anybody could want that as their wallpaper for their computer, it would be well worth it.
Thank you. I agree. Look, what you guys cannot see that I hope you do, it is this huge panoramic shot with the ball in full motion, just flying across the page.
And I love how the artwork too. You see that Babe, this is Babe who slugged the bat, and you see the word up going up, up. It travels along the arc of the ball, and in the background, for what I understand, of course, Miss Kelly, I'm not a baseball historian like you are, but looking at the way that Suzanne has made the building, the Yankee Stadium, the columns are in the right spots. They were built, it went up. It kind of was up like a Roman or a Greek amphitheater type thing. It went up, and then you had columns for the second level, and the second level did that. It just, golly, this is such a beautiful picture.
Isn't it? Thank you. I will tell her. Isn't it gorgeous? And everybody on the field has got, all the Yankees have their hands up. cheering, even the umpires, mouth open. It is lovely.
Yeah,
It is lovely.
yeah. If you look, he doesn't open his hips much, and that's how he swung. You know, a lot of guys when you see them hit, they open their hips to get more of the movement in it. He didn't have to do that. That's what I'm saying. He was probably the best power hitter, just upper body, that you will ever see. He didn't really do that.
And he was also famous for his little matchstick legs.
Yes.
And she has done his little matchstick. I mean, it was very fun because he was a southpaw hitter. But one of the most famous pictures of Babe Ruth, the iconic Babe Ruth picture, for 1 year, because nobody was going to pitch to him, they kept making him walk, and he said he was just sick of walking. He started batting right-handed. One of the most famous pictures of Babe Ruth batting that you will see on the internet or anywhere, he's batting right-handed.
Okay. All right.
I have
never heard of that.
Go and look and you will find out. So when we looked at it, my son is a big baseball guy too. So we're looking at these pictures and it's like, wait a minute, it's like we're holding our bats and trying to make sure, is this the right-handed one or the left-handed one? And then we'd send them to Suzanne and, a lot of research went into it.
Yep.
Everybody checked every little picture.
I'm sending you.
Are you looking at it?
Yes, ma'am. I'll send you this right now. It looks like the bat is so small. How big was he?
He was about 6'2".
It's pretty big for the time.
He was very big for then. He was taller than average. He was bigger than average. When he first started playing baseball, he was about 185. But he was big. Back then, the average man was 5'8", was about the top. 5'8" was the average of people then. So he was quite a bit taller than anybody else. But there were guys as big as he were playing baseball then.
Yeah, just
he also wielded a bat that was huge. He wielded a very heavy bat.
He just doesn't look right hitting right-handed on this picture.
No, he's not. He's not in this one. What I said is when you go on the internet.
Oh, that one right there. I sent it to you.
Oh,
this picture I just sent to you, he just doesn't look right, Miss Kelly. I mean, left-handed is the way you see it.
Yes.
I'll put this up on on my Twitter feed. I think I can do that. I don't think there's a copyright on this. I probably can do that, but he doesn't look right. And there is even, and I know this is way off the subject, there is even it gives credit, so I could do it. He's swinging the bat. It's just weird looking. Oh, but I'm getting off subject. I want to keep going.
Well, here we are. That ball is still flying through the air.
It's been going on since I've been talking. Let's see where it lands.
Over the field, over the fence, into the stands, home run.
You know what I like about this too? Can you pull the picture here? You have, and I'm sure that you and your artists talked about this too. Color is not an issue.
Because color was not an issue for baseball fans. Color, everybody played baseball, and there was no segregation on a baseball in the grandstand. If you could buy the seat, you were sitting there. And people have talked about this because we went and got vintage photos and sent them to Susanna Covelli to make sure that we included the actual way the people were in the stands. And it was all different colors. It didn't matter who you were a baseball fan. And a lot of people do not know, but the Negro Leagues, Yankee Stadium was the home stadium for 25 years to the Negro League teams.
I did not know that.
Yes, and a lot of them played there. July 5th, there was this very famous charity baseball game played. I'm blanking on the year, for the Pullman Porters in Yankee Stadium. And Babe Ruth, if you asked him his best player, somebody did ask him, I think it was Christy Walsh, said, who's the best baseball player you know? And he said, in the major leagues? And because she said, no, anybody. And he said, I'll go for John Lloyd. Pop Lloyd was his name, John Henry Lloyd. Said he was the best player, period, across the board. And on barnstorming tours. So this book, you guys, there's one more page and then I'll finish telling you, because it was a home run that christened the house that Ruth built. And if anybody wants to know the rest of the story, as Babe Ruth rounded third, he took off his cap and waved it all the way home. His pre-game wish had come true. But the game wasn't over yet. It was only the bottom of the third. There were still 6 innings left to play. Babe followed up his stellar first ever home run by being the first Yankee to be charged with an error when he muffed a ball. As errors go, Babe's didn't affect the game. The score remained 4-0 until the 7th inning, when Red Sox first baseman Tioga George Burns, who'd already made the first hit in the stadium and the first error, finally scored one for the Sox off a triple by second baseman Norm McMillan. But one run wasn't enough. The April 18th, 1923 season opener, the first baseball game ever played in Yankee Stadium, ended with the score Yankees 4, Red Sox 1. The Babe was back. Babe went on to hit 41 home runs that season and led the Yankees to a third straight American League pennant and the team's first ever World Series championship.
Now, I know it's late for you, so I do want to ask you something real quick.
Yes.
Okay. You said 41 home runs, and I know
that season.
And I know you know the answer to this. This is before Murder's Row. This is before Garrett came on. This is before the others that came on that are slipping my head right now. To pitch to Babe Ruth had to be the most scary thing to do as a pitcher. It had to be, because now you have several players right now. For the Rangers can do it. There's a couple for the Yankees that can do it. And again, I'm not a big baseball fan, but I know who these. And I can see them in my head. I watched McGuire. I grew up watching Oakland, and then I watched McGuire with the Cardinals. I saw that hit where he broke Maris's record.
Mm-hmm.
There should be an asterisk next to it, but I saw that. I watched Griffey hit. I watched Barry Bonds hit, again, asterisk, but still I remember those things. Sosa hitting, but you had different pitchers and different ways to hit or to pitch around these people. You didn't have that back then. Ruth had to be the most imposing guy that you could pitch against that year or any other year, really. 41 home runs is a lot.
So he single-handedly hit more home runs than any other team combined in the major leagues.
Oh golly. The only juicing that they can complain to him doing is probably alcohol. That was it.
Well, yes. Well, yes. And it's funny because they do talk about his excesses.
Yes.
And but how can somebody play for more than 20 years in the major leagues the way he did? And then when he was in 1927, he was the actual first athlete to get a personal trainer. And he was this avid golfer.
Yeah, he was.
So he wasn't one that liked to run, but he would play golf. And when he played golf, he power walked the course. And then he said that if you look at his baseball swing, it is sort of like a golf swing. They sort of the same thing. And he actually one time was playing golf and a ball was up in the air and he threw his club up in the air and hit the ball that was going through the air. I mean, they did scientific tests on him, and I'm going to flip back through the book because scientists actually pulled him in and did all of these tests to see what his reflexes were. What was it about him that he could hit the way that he could hit? And his reflexes were better than the average person. If you guys get the book, I have the details. But they did research on him, and they did the same tests later on Alex Rodriguez, who also had phenomenally fast in reflexes. But the big thing about Babe Ruth is he was on track for being a Hall of Fame pitcher.
Yes, he was.
When he gave up pitching full time because he wanted to play more games.
They Cy Young, Cy Young was earlier than Ruth, if I remember correctly, but they were in the same general area. They pitched on a lot less rest than you would see today, but still, you're talking about going every 3 days.
And when he, yes, he pitched about every 3 days, and he wanted to play every game. So he actually, when they finally did make him, the Sox made him a fielder, he was playing every single day.
I still think it's funny how he played outfield. And not that he couldn't do it. Obviously, what you're saying is he could do it. But the way I picture him is he would be better first baseman. Just the build that he had.
Maybe, I don't know. I really
But again, that's just me, because I really haven't watched a lot of his fielding videos, if they have too many of them. But
it's it's funny you say that, because when he, and I don't know, but when he went on the Japan tour after he retired, they gathered together the guys that went on the Japan tour, and he played first base a lot of times in Japan.
He looks like he would be, because you're talking about reflexes.
Uh-huh.
Good gracious, there's two places in the infield that you have to have good ones, the third base, especially the hot corner, and the first baseman, because not only are you getting, you'll get something to it from a shortstop to you, and maybe they throw it back-footed and it bounces. You have to have good reflexes, and if what you're saying is true, and I believe it, good gracious, that guy would have been perfect as a first baseman.
Well, he grew up playing absolutely every position.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Because when he was at St. Mary's, they had to get a job. He actually trained to be a tailor. So at St. Mary's, he started school. They had to go to school in the day. They got up early in the morning, went to church, then they went to school for a couple hours. He was very embarrassed when he started school because he could not read or write. And partially because he didn't go to school all that time when he was supposed to. So he was a big kid, and they put him in class with the little kids, so he was embarrassed about it. He really said that baseball saved him, that by Brother Matthias taking him under his wing. But then they would go to a job because they wanted them to learn a trade, and he learned to be a tailor, and he learned to turn collars, because in those days, the collars were not attached to the shirts. They had the little buttons put them on, the shirt.
Yeah.
And his wife, Claire, his second wife, said even after he was a famous baseball player, he would sew his own collars and sew on his own buttons, and knew how to do it. But
well, they call him a Renaissance man right there.
I know, isn't that now we don't even know where new buttons come from. But then afterward, they would play ball, and everybody played baseball, and you played whatever position you could play. And then when he was about 12, he was playing on the team with 16-year-olds, and they played every position. And he said when he was coming up, he didn't care where he played. They played everywhere.
Looking at him, number one, and again, I'm going to appreciate you coming on, Miss Kelly, and for getting me back on after that. You, like I said, you have not disappointed me. I loved every second of this. It's just awesome. A couple things about Babe Ruth. Again, I only know what I know from Ken Burns, that baseball documentary that he did.
Exactly. Yes.
Fantastic. He did the Civil War, and I think he did something over music. Oh, fantastic. Anyway, Babe Ruth is the larger than life guy, and the older the history gets, the bigger he gets. But when I look at him, he looks like he's just a big kid.
And he was, and I think he really was. And looking for love. They said his wife Claire later said, they talk about how big his appetite was, and the stories are rampant. He he never felt full, and probably because when he was in St. Mary's, they ate, I mean, it was like Oliver Twist. They ate nothing. They got weenies on Sunday, and by the time Sunday came, they had traded their weenies for somebody else. He did get paid for working as a tailor. The brothers put half of their money aside and gave them a little pocket money. And it's interesting because a couple of his classmates from St. Mary's have written books about Babe Ruth, including Babe Ruth, and would talk about how he would spend his money and give the little kids who didn't have jobs yet that hit the candy. And wherever he would go, he would stop and play ball with little kids. He always signed autograph. He would often, they'd come and run down on the field. Back then, Yankee Stadium, and this is so cool. These big stadiums now, and even the new Yankee Stadium, to exit, the fans went from the grandstand across the field to exit at the back behind center field.
I did know that.
You and I would be there. And then when it was over, you could go right down on the field. Well, often they would go down in the middle of games and stop the play because there'd be so many fans on the field, or kids would run on the field to get autographs. They'd steal the bases, pick them up. They'd steal the balls. It was incredible. And I do want to say before we hang up right now, the new Yankee Stadium, as I told you earlier, they just built it across the street from the old one. Where the old one is now called Heritage Park, and it's a sports complex. There is a baseball diamond that is in the front, just across the street from Yankee Stadium. By the baseball diamond is a little piece of the top of Yankee Stadium that they have preserved there after they demolished the first one. And those bases are on the exact same spot that the Yankees players played the game. So if you go there like now today, you could run the bases that Babe Ruth ran. You could hit a ball off of the plate that is in the same place that Babe Ruth, Joe DiMaggio, Mickey Mantle, Yogi Berra, all of them played baseball. It gave me chills just to be there.
Would they let a Southerner come up there is what I want to know.
I think so. And guess what? If you had a ticket to the game, you could go to the Yankees Museum for free, because in the stadium is the Yankees Museum. It's open before every home game.
That is, like I said, I'm a football fan, but I respect sports. I respect sports in the history of any sport. People could tell me about it. I may not catch it, but people could tell me about it. But anybody who grew up when I did, Yankee lore was what it was. And the people here where I live, when I asked them about their baseball fandom, 99%, who grew up in the 50s, 60s, it was Yankees. It was Yankees. Because you mentioned, and again, I thank you for coming on here. You mentioned about how the fans could walk through the field. You remember when Hank Aaron, of course, if you've never watched this film, Hank Aaron had a beautiful swing, just a beautiful swing. He was power, but he was also grace in his swing. It was just awesome. He hits the home run that gets him over Ruth. He did this against death threats. And something tells me that if Ruth was not alive at that time, but if Ruth was alive at that time, he would have supported Hank Aaron breaking his record.
Oh, hands down. Come on, hands down.
But then those two guys come running out on the field, running alongside Hank Aaron. That wouldn't go over well. That was so dangerous. And I think, if I remember correctly, Hank Aaron was scared to death.
Well, it was a difficult, horrible time for him. The pressure, and it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. Like, records are meant to be broken.
There's no asterisk to him, by the way. Hank Aaron was a legit baseball player who used his skill and his drive to do what Ruth did 50 years earlier. What you did with this book and how you presented it today is exactly what I thought it would be from just talking with you. You made a human out of a mythical creature. I've read Perseus, and I've read several stories that you think, well, this is a mythical, and you can't humanize certain things in Greek myths. Babe Ruth is an American myth, real person, but an American myth. And you know what I'm talking about with that. This book humanizes him because you focus on not only his swing, which again, Susanna did an amazing job at that, but then you look at the different people and you show little black girls, little white girls, a white man here, a black man here, and they're dressed in appropriate attire for the time with the hats and the bonnets, and they're smiling and they are having a good time and they want Cracker Jacks. And you just look at that and you said, that's the type of it's just beautifully done. You did an amazing job.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And I have had, well, as you can tell, I've had a great time. Thanks
I can't tell it at all. You haven't stopped but smiling since we talked.
This is so much fun. It is. It's fun. And baseball is a family game.
It is.
And you start throwing balls with each other. When they're little teeny, you roll the ball and then you start throwing the ball and then you can watch it. There's my favorite thing. People say, what's your favorite team? And I'm going to tell you, my favorite team is any high school team out there or any little league team out there. Oh my gosh, or the little T-ballers, when everybody's out there rooting for them and they can barely scoop up a ball.
I got a couple stories
so
here,
much fun.
And I think you would appreciate these. Okay, and then we'll call it a night. Again, thank you for coming on. I know it's late. My son played t-ball for 2 or 3 years. I don't think he enjoyed it, but he wanted to do it. And the first story here is he was scared of the ball. It happens. It happens. I've been drilled a few times. It hurts. So we went out to the backyard of the house, which is right that way, if you could see it as that way. And I started throwing the ball with him and he would duck. And, I'm just tossing it. I was like, all right, son. All right, Connor, here's what we're going to do. I took a chair, put it in the middle of the backyard, sat him down and said, do not move. I'm not going to throw the ball hard. Don't move. And I tossed the ball and he caught it. And at that point, I went and picked him up. Of course, he was a lot bigger than I should have done. And he said, next time I catch the ball, you need to do that again. I was like, Connor, that's the best I can do right now. But he caught the ball and he wasn't scared of it. But at the end of the season, he hadn't got a hit yet. Or if he did, it was just kind of a dribbler type stuff and he would get out. T-ball is what it is. And I said, son, this is the end. You have to do your best. Hit it as hard as you could. And he sent that thing to the outfield and ran to the second, and I kept that ball. I still have it today. He signed it for me, and it's in his room now. So when you talk about baseball being a family sport, he was never into football. He played a little bit of basketball. Soccer was not his thing. He did play that. But that baseball moment where he caught the ball and then hit it, that's what you captured in that book. That's exactly what you captured in that book. Ms. Kelly, thank you. Thank you for being you. Thank you for the book. And thank you for helping me relive the fact that I grew up a baseball fan and just all these things came back to me. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on tonight. Thanks for everybody for listening and have a great season.
And by the way, she said, this is a football podcast, but I think it's that second part. It's the family. This is what that is. Thank you. And thank y'all for listening.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you got to do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.